Hello and welcome to my channel. So today I've got a bit of a mishmash video for you. Basically it's a follow-up. A little while back I did a series of videos of all my colouring supplies. If you've not seen that, I'll put a playlist up in the corner, but it was basically where I showed everything that I owned. All my pencils, all my pens, all my paints, and I've been wanting to do a little bit of follow-up for that because I felt like there were still things that I wanted to show but didn't really fit into that. So this is like that odds and ends and bits and pieces of just tools, I guess, tools of things that I use for my adult colouring. So it's not going to be very long, keep it nice and short and sweet, but yeah, let's get started. Right, so we'll start with this one as it's nice and pretty to look at in the meantime. But basically, we're not looking at the picture, we are looking at this. It's a clipboard. It's one of these hardback, well, it's not hardback, it's like sort of chipboard. So it's really sturdy. And this is what I use for whenever I print out a PDF and then I want to colour it, because obviously it doesn't have that support of a book. And this stops it because it's also smaller than the board. It means it's not going to get, you know, damaged corners and things like that. And yeah, so basically I use this a fair amount. I always put, well, I've got another picture behind there at the moment because I was working on two, but I also I put some scrap paper behind it, just because I hate working directly on the hardboard and it just gives that little paper cushion as if I'm working in a colouring book. But this is what I use for whenever I use my PDFs. Very good. They're pretty cheap, these. I will leave links to everything in the description below on Amazon if I can find them. I don't think I actually got this from Amazon, but I'll have a look. There's similar. But yeah, they're pretty cheap. I think they're only a couple of quid. So that is really, really useful if you do not have a clipboard. And then talking of, well, objects, paper objects in this case, it's not a supply because I mean, it's drawing paper. You could use it as supply. That's not what I use it for. People use things inside their colouring books. If they have chalk pastel or are using waxy pencils like Prismas that can rub off on the page opposite. I have this paper. It came in a big roll. I'm not sure how long it is. 10 metres, 5 metres, I don't know. But basically it meant that I could, because it was on a roll, it meant I could cut it to size depending whatever my colouring book size is. And sometimes I just put a piece of paper in to stop the rub off on the opposite page, and sometimes I make it a bit bigger than the page. If I'm doing something like chalk pastels or painting an acrylic background where I know it's going to go over the edge, I'll cut one of these that's bigger than the page of the book I'm working on, and I know I've got that border, which means I can, you know, not get paint all over my table or whatever. It was pretty cheap. I think it was only £2 or £3. I definitely bought that off of Amazon. But yeah, I use this, as you can see. I don't use it very often because I've got loads left, but I do use it sometimes. I use this in particular in my Johanna Basford books because you know how much bigger they are, and they're wider than A4, which means I can't just use an ordinary sheet of A4 paper. This is what I use it for the most. So let's talk sharpeners, because I have a few. Not at home. I'm not a big, you know, crazy sharpener collector. I'm very functional. I just wanted to sharpen my pencil. So I have a to-go. I need to get a replacement one. This is getting a bit dull now, the blade. These are good for Prismas, especially because this one has this, I mean, I'm sure you're all familiar with it, but it has this dial on it, and that affects how long the point is. So if you do it on 2 or 3, you'll get that really short Prisma nib that you can get, or if you do it on 5, you can get a really long nib. So I have one of those. I do need a replacement. I've got one of these ones. It's not even got a brand. It's just one of these standard 2-hole sharpeners that you get for narrow ones, but I use it mostly because it's the only really sort of fat one that I've got if you get odd pencils, and you can replace the blades on this. I don't use that very often, but every now and again I have a pencil that really sort of just fits and gets on with it. I also have a Prismacolor pencil sharpener. This is one of those 2-hole ones again. I will just let that motorbike go past. Okay, he definitely needs a new exhaust. So this one, the holes aren't bigger. It's not the same as on this one. Basically, these two holes is another way of getting the shorter point and the longer point. Now, the only reason I have this Prismacolor pencil sharpener is it came with a set where I got some pencils as well. I probably wouldn't have bought it especially. Well, I definitely wouldn't have bought it especially. But it's actually okay. I know a lot of people don't like this sharpener. And I must admit, I don't like it very much for Prismas. Oddly, I found it fantastic for my luminance pencils, and that's what I used to use it for primarily until I got my mechanical pencil sharpener. I always used to use this one for my luminance pencils. The one thing I will say about this is if you saw my, what was it called? The Faber-Castell, when I did the black edition, that pencil swatching video where all my nibs broke, this was the sharpener that I'd used. Does not get on well with it, and I should have figured that out because this also destroyed my Black Widow pencils. Whenever I used to sharpen the Black Widow, I always used to get breakages. I don't know why I didn't make the connection. There must be something about that sort of level of formula. Always got breakages. So yeah, it has its place, but I'm not sure if I would ever recommend a sharpener like that. It was fine when I got it as part of my set, but yeah, I wouldn't go out the way for it. This, however, was the game changer. If you saw this, I got this as a Christmas present, and at the time I did think that it was quite good. 5 months later, I still think this is like the best thing since sliced bread. It really is. If you do not have a mechanical sharpener in your life, you need to change that. So if you're not familiar with it, you pull out this, you put your pencil in the end here and grip it with the clamps, and then you just turn the handle. And it gives you, if you see it, it doesn't give shavings in the regular way. It kind of like grinds it down. And I don't think I've had a single breakage since I've got this. I know it can, and I know there's a way you have to like pull off the back or whatever, because if you get a lead stuck in the little grinder thing, it can stop it working. I've not had that yet. This is just, if I ever recommended one sort of utility piece of equipment, mechanical pencil sharpener. Fantastic. This is the Helix one. It's made out of metal. For some reason the handle is plastic, but the casing itself is made of metal, and I love it. Absolutely love it. You can also change the sharpness. There's, to be honest, even though it's 5 settings, there isn't a huge amount of difference in the pointiness of the pencils, but it can be done. So yeah, those are my pencil sharpeners. Okay, let's talk erasers. So I don't actually have that many erasers. The one I use the most is the Staedtler Mars plastic. So these are like the kind of the white rubbery ones. I do like these. I like these a lot. The only thing you have to be careful of, because they come in this little cardboard wrapper, sort of glossy, and sometimes if it gets to low and you're close to here, then you can do this. And then one time I actually put blue on my paper because it rubbed off of here, which is why after a while, when it gets shorter, I do take these sleeves off. But these are really cheap. I think I paid £3 or something like that for the pack of 2. If you buy a pack of 10, it gets cheaper. It's one of those ones that the more you buy, I mean, I'm not a huge pencil worker, so these last me ages anyway. But yes, if you are looking for a good warhorse of an eraser, I can highly recommend these Staedtler ones. I don't know what this Mars plastic means, but that's the Rastoplast. I don't even know where I got this from. I picked it up somewhere in my travels, probably came in a set somewhere, but these ones I did buy as a 2-pack off Amazon, and yeah, I love them. I love them. Always use these. So that's what I use for when I've got large areas to erase. And then for the things that when I've got small details, so I've just gone over the edge, or I've got a really small petal that I want to do. So it's a Tonbow Mono Zero eraser. It's one of these ones, it's like a mechanical one. You pump the end and it pushes more of the stick out. So these is what, it doesn't look much, and it's not much, but because you're doing such a small precise area, these last you ages. I bought this, I think this was maybe a £5 on Amazon, and it came with one in it, and it came with 2 spares, and I've still got, you saw how much is on this. This is like, Let's compare this. Oops. Oh, I've taken the thing off both ends. So this is like the spare and is brand new. So I've only just started this one. You can see I've only used a couple of millimeters. And I bought this, it must be, I think it's like 3 years ago in August. So obviously I don't use it that much, but don't be deceived by it being small, these erasers being small, because they do last ages and ages. I think the refills only cost something like £3 and you get a pack of 2. So yeah, highly recommend these if you like doing lots of small details there. Right, so that's all of my erasers. Get rid of those. Which brings me to this. When I erase, you get all that debris. And also when you use coloured pencils, you sometimes get dust. Luminance give off dust. So the softer pencils, Prismacolor gives off dust. And you want to avoid, especially on highly pigmented pencils, you want to avoid brushing them with your hand because they can turn to smears on your page. So what you do is you use a brush. And you can buy special brushes. This isn't a special brush. You don't need to spend 2 or 3 times the amount of money for a special brush when this will do just fine. So this is a makeup brush. You know, sometimes you get those big sets with, and you know, there's about 3 or 4 brushes in it you use all the time, and there's always like a brush that you're like, well, what am I going to do with that? And this is one of those brushes for me. So I'm like, I don't need a fan brush. I'm not going to do my cheekbones. No. So yeah, I use it for brushing off my colouring book pages. You can probably pick up things like this in places like Dollar Tree or Poundland, or you know, any of these budget friendly stores that sell cheap makeup sets. Yeah, so that's that. And last but not least, in this sort of utility pencil-y type thing, I've got a pencil extender, and basically you put the pencil inside here, and this one you just pull up the little ring and it tightens it around. There are different ones which, you know, screw tight, things like that. Obviously I don't have a pencil in this one. It's quite a narrow one. I actually got this one as a freebie from when I purchased some pencils. They just chucked in one of these for free. I do need to get some pencil extenders because my luminants are getting small. I know what they call Derwent do a really 2 set of pencil extenders that I want, because I know that the fat one, they're 2 sizes. They got one small one like this, and then they do a fatter version which I know can hold like luminance and light fast and things like that, that you know, those pencils that are just that little bit chunkier. So yeah, pencil extender to do what it says, extend the length of your pencil when it's getting into a little baby. Right, so that was that one. Bulldog clips. I picked these up in Poundland. They have these little message, love your life, and I'm very busy, things like that. And but yeah, they're just little bulldog clips that I used. I don't use them very often, to be honest, because most of my books I just break the spine. But if you've got a colouring book that is wrestling you or something like that, that you just want to pin down and keep still, I can highly recommend just getting up some little bulldog clips. As I say, I got these from, did I say? I can't remember. I got these from Poundland, which is the same as the dollar store. So it was, well, there's 5 here. I'm sure it's a pack of 8 and it cost me £1. So yeah, really, really cheap, but really useful, especially, you know, not all the time, but sometimes. So I also have a scalpel, or you can otherwise know them as like an X-Acto knife and things. Obviously, they are very, very sharp. Do not use with care. Don't chop your finger. I know somebody who actually did chop off the tip of their finger because they was doing it. They was cutting into something and pressing really hard. If you're going to cut a straight line down a ruler, do never use a plastic ruler, because it will just divert up the plastic and over your finger. Use a metal ruler if you're going to use a scalpel or an X-Acto knife to cut straight lines. Anyway, that's my PSA. I use these for just occasionally. I don't use it very often, but sometimes you want to, if you want to say do a background, a chalk pastel background, and you want to avoid, or a paint background, and you want to avoid getting things on your image, you might want to make a little mask. And I mean, I use it for opening packages as well, because you know you do. But yeah, if you want to make a little mask for your image to stop it getting covered up with paint or chalk or anything like that, then this is a good way to outline it. Obviously you don't want to press very hard because you don't want to damage your book that's underneath, but that's why you have a really, really sharp blade. So yeah, I always have one of these handy. It doesn't get used very often, but when I do need one, it's invaluable, because it's just, you can't compare it to scissors for certain jobs. Oh, one more thing, I do use these for my chalk pastels. If you saw my recent colour and chat that I did, well, it was a this or that tag video where I did do a chalk pastel background. I used this to scrape off the chalk. I did mention chalk pastels, so I just have a little tub here which did have cotton buds. It was obviously full with them one time. Now I just keep a couple of these handy, rather than having that whole big, I mean, they come in big bags, and same as these come in bigger pots and tubs. Instead of having that take up all the space, I just sort of de-kitted down into a small handy size, so they're always in reach. And I use that for applying and rubbing in the chalk, the cotton buds, Q-tips. I'll actually rub it straight onto the pastel and then put it on the page. And for the cotton pads, that's when I use my scalpel to scrape off the chalk, and then I'll rub it in. So highly recommend those. And then obviously, I mean, these are just cheapy ones. I think I got these from Lidl, so they probably cost like 60p. But baby wipes, if you've ever used chalk pastels, you'll know why you want baby wipes. It's just, unless you want to leave fingerprints everywhere, you will need some baby wipes. So, getting to the end then, we'll just go on to the types of things I use for my paints. Various jars, dishes. If you know, I try to recycle things when I can, and packaging especially. So these are the brushes. I use these cheap brushes for my acrylic paints. The reason I use cheap brushes is because eventually acrylic paint does clog up everything. I do have these other, I bought these brushes middle of last summer, and they're still in the packet, and that's because, look, I could use that to brush off my pencil dust, the same as that makeup brush. But I'm still like chewing out the very last of, you know, I want to get every inch of life out of these. These were super cheap. I think I only paid £2 or £3 for these, for a pack of 10 from Amazon. But they're great because they come in different sizes. You get little pointy ones, and you get the flathead ones, which is good for doing larger areas of background. Exclusively, I use those for acrylic paints. An old jam jar or jelly jar, and that's what I use for putting water in. These are the nicer ones that as I say, I'll keep holding on to them. I keep looking at them, they look so pretty. I don't want to clog them up with paint, but they're my backups. I got them from the works for £3, as you can see, so they're also very cheap and effective. This is an old jar again. I think I had like a, you know, creme caramel or something like that. And the reason I have two jars is that's the one that I dip for my, when I've got paint on my brush, I'll use water and wash it off there, and then I'll second dip it into this small dish of water that just gets out, it's not really getting out the paint from the brush, it's getting out the dirty water from the brush that I've picked up here. So that's why I have two brushes. And this is what I use for things like watercolours, if I'm using pens and I'm putting down some pigment, picking them up. This again was a dessert thing. It's ceramic though. When I work straight from a palette, then I have one of these quite often. If I'm using brushes like this, which I occasionally do, I do have some of these type brushes that's not clogged up. But this is one of those sort of water misters. I mean, it's a spray bottle. I got that from Sainsbury's, as you can see, which is a supermarket over here. You can pick them up in all sorts of places. I know I've seen them on Amazon as well. And you just, you know, squirt your water in. And I use that when I've got a palette of paints, as opposed to just trying to do drips. And these are the only water brush pens I've got. So this is an Arteza one, which is okay, but I find it a bit, it's one of these ones, I don't trust it. Like, I'll use it and it'll splodge out a huge lump of water every now and again. Either that or it'll run out. I mean, you can see actually, look, it's got water sitting in, I can see it rolling around in there. I can't trust it not to leak. But this is the only Arteza one I've got, and I know other people say really good things about it, so maybe I'm just unlucky with that brush. And I've got one of these, which is one of the Zig Kiritaki ones, and it has a very fine tip, which I really like. I think these are like £4 or £5 on Amazon, so they are quite expensive just for a one brush, but I do really like it. But I have heard people saying that they stop working quicker than other brushes, in that you have the little push thing here, and sometimes it just stops putting out water, so that's one thing to bear in mind. At the moment it seems okay, but yeah. And then I've got this water brush from Derwent, which I've not actually used before. It's one of these fat tip ones though, for when you want to do bigger areas. I don't know what this is like, because as I say, I haven't actually had the chance to use it. It's new. So yeah, I got it basically to replace the Arteza one. So that's it. That is all. Oh, one more thing. Just my scrappy old cloth. So a lot of people use paper towel to wipe off their brushes. I actually use one of these. It's like one of those Jay's sort of kitchen cloths things. And the reason why I do that instead of paper towel is when it all gets, you know, full of paint, you can actually just wash this, which you can't do with a paper towel. You throw it away. So I just use one of these instead of throwing away paper towels every time I want to paint. Let's not look at that because it's a bit disgusting. Let's look at these. So that is it for my sort of bits and pieces supply video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you found it useful, give me a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, do subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell. You get notification of any time I upload new videos. Don't forget, I've got a link up in the corner there to the previous parts of this supplies collection of videos. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. Take care and see you again soon. Bye for now. Bye.